So before I go into the garden to start de-stressing, I wanted to talk about stress and maybe stress for the overthinker. And I'm an overthinker. So for the next couple of weeks, and certainly today, my stress levels are at 10 out of 10. I'm incredibly stressed, and I create to a point my own stress due to overthinking. So what happens is I'm assuming for the average person, normal person, normals doesn't really exist, but for most people, the majority of people, you think about one or two things or topics or tasks, problems, situations at the same time. I can be thinking about 10, even up to 15 different topics at the same time. Sounds impossible, but they will be, I suppose, almost like passing the baton to each other, or it'd be like a table tennis situation, or I will literally be able to think about several things at the same time. It's almost like living in the matrix. You're kind of processing lots and lots of data. You're looking at the outcomes, the things that you need to do to impact those outcomes, what needs to happen for a positive outcome, the different things that could happen to prevent you getting a positive outcome. So in a work situation, because I'm dealing with prospects and customers, there is an awful lot of thought about the different factors that impact success, and success looks differently for different people and depending on the job that they do. But for me, there's an end goal, there's success, and that's normally making sure that I'm satisfying a customer and making sure that they are being, I suppose, their expectations are being met, and the things that we have explained and promised are being delivered. So there's a certain amount of stress involved in my day-to-day activity. Then you add life, you add children or family, and the responsibilities of being a father, being a partner, and also there's kind of the personal wants of the things that make you happy. So for me, I like to train, DIY. I'm a car enthusiast. There are certain things that I have on my plate, and wherever possible, I form lists. So I'm managing those lists. But when the stress levels are high, then you'll notice I'm speaking quite quickly. That is because I'm thinking so quickly. I will be processing lots and lots of data, and it makes me a little bit uncomfortable in my own head because I become slightly vacant. So, Laura or Esme, Eden will talk to me. Eden doesn't talk too much. And I am processing what they're saying, but I'm also thinking about 4 or 5 other things. So it can make me feel a little bit divorced from the family. It can also make me feel like I'm kind of not, I'm not in the room. And being in the room is really important. I'm not being mindful. So I'm beginning to kind of, I suppose, unravel slightly. But I recognize this, and I recognize that my thoughts become quite overwhelming. So I've done some cognitive behavioural therapy, CBT, much preferring saying CBT. I suppose in the simplest terms, with that kind of thought process, you look at the fact only. So rather than looking at all of the what ifs and could be's and the negative, thoughts and things which can consume you, you look at fact, absolute fact. And that's really useful in the work environment. You look for the fact. So in a sales process, I look for what I know and what I don't know, and how do I achieve understanding what I don't know in a structured way. And the same thing with home, and the same thing with, conversations that I have with a friend or family. I will often do other people's thinking for them. So, that could be quite negative in a relationship because, you hear one thing and your partner thinks they're saying something else positively, but you interpret that as a negative and start thinking about, oh, she said this, and oh, does that mean this, and blah, blah, blah. And it all begins to spiral, and you're having a conversation with yourself, you're doing other people's thinking for them, and that's really counterproductive. Same thing at work. Once upon a time, my boss could turn around and go, oh, you haven't done this. And I'd be like, oh, right. And I would break that down as a negative and understanding it. Devalue my, I wouldn't be motivated because I feel like somebody's criticizing me. Or actual fact, if I'd ask the question, what does that really mean? You actually learn, if you gather and obtain the fact, then you can halt some of the negative thoughts. For an overthinker, you know, CBT I think is really important. Mindfulness is really important. Anybody suffering from anxiety, having those type of mechanisms in place are really important. But also, it's kind of understanding that you do work in this way, and that using those thoughts can be quite beneficial if you're writing them down, if you're forming lists, because you are processing a lot of data, and some of that data is really useful. You kind of have to learn to move away from the negative thoughts and look at the positives and look at what we could do. And I'd like to think that anybody that works with me will say, hey, Alex does come up with some really positive kind of ideas and strategies, because I kind of move away from the negative and think, okay, what can I do to change this situation for the positive? It can be difficult if I'm trying to manage lots and lots of thoughts, but understanding that, I can break down, I can look at the positive, I can use mindfulness, I can use CBT. From a family perspective, it's really important I am in the room and I'm not divorced from what's going on there. So for me, training is an anchor. I think everybody needs an anchor. They need something where you stop thinking. For that moment, you don't think anything else. And, you know, I think for anybody that is suffering from those type of, you know, I suppose, overthinking, becoming consumed, becoming overwhelmed, especially in their younger age, it's really important that we recognize this and we talk to them, which is one of the reasons I do these type of videos, because I like my daughter to be able to have these conversations with me. Because, you know, if you look at the negative connotations of overthinking, if somebody wants to stop thinking, they will turn to drink, they will turn to drugs, they will turn to something which allows them to escape. That is a negative anchor. A positive anchor is things like training or having a goal, having a hobby, which maybe does mean that you break lots of thoughts down into different aspects. So being creative, you know, for me, gardening, DIY, all of those things allow me to utilize that overthinking, because it does allow me to create, and being creative I think is quite useful. But also for me today, moving 2 ton of recycled topsoil is going to be hard work. And for the time that I'm doing that, I'm thinking about filling that wheelbarrow. I'm thinking about moving the wheelbarrow. I'm thinking about emptying it. And that is therapy, ladies and gentlemen. And everybody has a different kind of, you know, outlet. And maybe a lot of us don't need that outlet. But if you are an overthinker and it impacts your stress levels, I suppose simply, what can I say? Think about facts. Think about actual outcomes. So, you know, how can I give that as an example? I can't. All the overthinking, I haven't even got an answer to that. But you need to look at facts. You need to look at the question that you're asking yourself, or the thought that's going through your mind, and look for a fact. If you can find the fact, concentrate on the fact. Don't make up the answers. Don't do other people's thinking. If you are stressed, talk about it with those around you. Explain the situation. Why are you stressed? What's impacting your stress levels? How can other people help? Look for things that allow you to escape positively. For me, training, moving topsoil, spending time with my family. Yesterday, we went and did some climbing, being very competitive. Being 15 stone and trying to climb up walls was difficult, but in a group full of children, I didn't let any of them beat me. My daughter was absolutely amazing, and that gave me such a sense of joy. There is nothing which can really describe the sense of fulfillment you have out of seeing your children being happy. And that's why I said earlier that my happiness is intrinsically linked to them, and if they are happy. The negative I have is that my thoughts can prevent me being in the room, and that's something you really kind of need to steer yourself away from. So mindfulness, understanding your stress, looking for the facts, having an outlet are really important. But also, don't beat yourself up. For me, you know, it's subjective. The way I feel right now is that I'm the most successful I've ever been in a work environment. You know, I don't like to reference my success because, you know, there is a big team at Access and I work with a great team. We have a great product. We have an absolutely, you know, amazing team. If I'm successful, it's a reflection on them. But yes, I am one of the best performers in the Access Group. The Access Group is not a small company. So I will give myself a little bit of credit. And that's because I've learned to handle these stress points, but I've made them work for me, because that skill set of being able to think the way that I think, if I can move away from the noise, that actually becomes really useful. So if you are an overthinker, if you suffer from anxiety, if you suffer from stress, please do reach out, because, you know, I'm 47 next year. I would say it's only the last 3 or 4 years that I've started to nail this, and I've been working on it since I was about 30. When I hit 30, I thought I cannot continue thinking and being like this. I was not in a good place for a number of reasons, and, you know, I was getting to the point where I knew that I couldn't train forever, and training was my anchor. And, you know, it's true, as I've got older, I cannot train to the same level I did when I was 30. I was an animal in the gym. And for that 2 hours, I had that outlet. But for the rest of the time, not so much. So, yeah, if anybody does suffer from stress or anxiety and would like to reach out, I would be really happy to talk to you. I'm not an expert. I'm not a counsellor. I'm only qualified in my own life experiences. But I have seen some change in myself over the last few years, and I would really appreciate helping somebody else, or helping, you know, even just one person deal with stress, anxiety, overthinking, because I understand how debilitating that can be, but also how unrecognised it is. If you had met me 5 years ago, and I know that ex-colleagues have said, oh, I've never really realised that about you, because you don't talk about it. It's a weakness, right? Can't admit weakness. Can't admit that I'm vulnerable, or, you know, I have these thoughts which are negative and intrusive. But I'm a better father for it. I'm a better employee. You know, I'm better in all aspects of my life because I've accepted who I am and my thought process, and I no longer see it as a negative. I no longer see it as something that is inhibiting me. I see it as something I need to manage and control. But if I harness it, I can actually perform at a greater level than you know, not others. I think that'd be the wrong thing to say, but I can certainly now perform at a much higher level than I did, you know, 5, 10, 15 years ago. So I hope this waffle, some of this can be cut down and as a bite-sized chunk be used and be, you know, helpful to those around you. But I'm going to go and start moving that topsoil, and hopefully there might be a couple of minutes out of this 13 that is relevant to those suffering from kind of similar kind of mental illness. Is it mental? Am I ill? Probably. Do I see it as an illness? No. I see it as something I need to understand, embrace, manage, utilise, harness, but ultimately accept, because if I can accept it, I can utilise it and I can actually be happy. There you go. Apologies, I didn't expect this video to be this long.